4 lessons learned from the loss to the Doggies. Let's get into it. Before we get into it, again, like, comment, subscribe. Subscriptions would mean the world to me if you can just hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. And we're just trying to hit 10,000 by the end of the year. I would very much appreciate it. If you're already subscribed, big kisses. I love you all. Now, let's look into some lessons that I learned from the game on Friday. I'm still processing the game. Every day that sort of goes by, I'm just like, for 3.5 quarters, for 3 quarters, we did really well. And backs against the wall, we didn't go in as favourites. And, all these injuries and the VFL's players playing. And it was like, okay, it was probably coming. It was probably a loss that was coming. But there were still a couple of lessons to be learnt. Here they are. The first one, nice and simple. Bad kicking is bad football. Now, we saw that this game should have been put to bed in the first quarter. We kicked 5 goals, 7 in the first quarter. A lot of those 7 behinds were very easy shots. I know Bo kicked one in towards the end of that first quarter where it hit the post. Schultz missed a couple. It was just those ones where they were easy to get, and I can say easy because I'm not kicking in front of 40,000 people. I'm sitting on a chair in my study in my bedroom, talking to a camera. So I say easy because of that. But it's just those shots where you kind of just go, okay, if we keep missing these ones, you think it might come back and bite us, and bite us it did. It really messed us up that first quarter. We were up by 17 points going into the second quarter. We should have been up by at least a goal or 2 more. Like we should have been close to 30 points up, and given the Doggies a little bit more to think about. But we keep them in the game, and they're a very good side, and they come back and they haunt us. And just, bad kicking is bad football, and we've seen it numerous times over the last couple of weeks. Fremantle being the biggest one, we kicked 5 points in the second quarter. And I guess a symptom of bad kicking is bad football is that you're not going to win games when you have scoreless quarters. We saw it against the Doggies. We saw it in the last quarter. We didn't kick anything. Saw it against Fremantle in the second quarter. And it's just, even 1 goal in a quarter can help you go far. Playing 30 minutes as a side as good as we are and not kicking any goals is a bit, it's a bit frustrating. It's just a bit shit, really. It's a bit shit, really. We shouldn't be going an hour of football in, between 2 games, not scoring any goals. The lesson I learned is that we're not fourth quarter specialists anymore. We used to be touted at 3-quarter time. We could go up and just smash teams in the fourth quarter. And I know that's a symptom of not having our full team out. Like, I know we've got 7 or 8 premiership players not playing. So I know that fourth quarter is a symptom of that, and I fully understand that. But we should be showing a little bit more fight in that last quarter. Like the last quarter against the Doggies, we kicked 1 point. Against Fremantle, we kicked 2 goals, so not too bad in that last quarter. Could have been better because Fremantle, we obviously drew that game. Against Adelaide the week before, we kicked 1 goal 2. Well, that was that Jordan De Goey goal. Against West Coast in round 10, we kicked 1 goal 2 against West Coast. And that was pretty much it. So it's just been these last 4 weeks. Because against Carlton the week before, 9, 10, 11, we kicked 4 goals. We kicked 4 goals. 4 goals 5 or something in that last quarter. So that was when we didn't have a lot of players out, and now, after that, the West Coast game happens, and then we start dropping players, and you can see our fourth quarter is starting to fade, which kind of takes me into my third lesson learned, is that the synergy is just lacking, and that's in part with these fourth quarter fade-outs. They kind of go hand in hand, where because we're starting to play, VFL sort of players, or VFL not listed players, players that play VFL a lot. They're not sort of seniors, and they're finally getting games, which is amazing for them. They've only got about 3 quarters in them to give it everything they can. Braden Maynard came out after the game and said, this team has only got about 105 minutes of football compared to 120 minutes all up. So you can see why teams are sort of running over the top of us. You can see why that, Fremantle ran over the top of us. You can see why the Doggies ran over the top of us in that last quarter. And it doesn't matter how many, Nick Daicos's, Josh's, Bobby Hill's, all these other guys. It doesn't matter how many that you have. If you haven't got a full team that can go all the way from start to finish, it's going to really show, and we've seen that over the last 4 weeks. Craig McRae came out and said that this team right now that we have played isn't battle hardened. They're not, they're not. They haven't played with each other for a bunch of games. It's only been like 4 or 5 games that this sort of core team without all these injuries, with all these injuries, have been playing together. So there is some synergy lacking. There is a lack of cohesion. There is a lack of going from start to finish, like Braden Maynard mentioned. And once we start getting these players back from injury, it will start looking like the old Collingwood. That still is a few weeks away, but you can kind of forgive them for that like last quarter fade out. But in saying that, this goes back to my first lesson where bad kicking is bad football. We know now that our fourth quarters aren't going to be good, but we know I was going to say historically, but I guess historically over the last 4 or so weeks, our first quarters are really good. So we've got to put our foot down when we can. So we've got to start putting these teams to the sword and getting rid of them by half time. Like let's just say next week against Melbourne, we kick 4 goals, 8 in the first quarter again, and we have Melbourne on the ropes. They start coming back, we come back, kind of like the Bulldogs game. They're going to run all over the top of us in that last quarter. We need to put these teams to bed when we can and then defend for our lives, because we just can't get it going in that last quarter because of the kids. And I'm not blaming the kids or anything like that. I'm not really blaming injuries, but you can see why these injuries to these players really hurt us. Another lesson I learned is that no matter what happens with Collingwood, no matter what injuries you have, what happens during the game, you can't say anything on social media without some opposition supporter talking shit, right? So we've seen what happened against the Doggies, and then you can't say, oh, it sucks that we have all these players out injured, because someone will say, oh, but the Doggies had more players injured. It's like, well, okay, cool, man. Like, whataboutism, I fucking hate whataboutism. Oh, you can't complain about we can't say one thing without saying another thing. Oh, it sucks that Pendlebury's out. Oh, what about Aaron Norton's out? Like, I don't care, brother. I honestly don't care. I'm talking about Pendles. I'm talking about Mychek. I'm talking about Jamie Elliott, Cox. These guys that we're always looking to. I don't care that they're not my team to worry about. Norton, Johannesson, Bailey Smith, who hasn't played all season anyway. So like, this whataboutism is just stupid, right? And there's always going to be opposition supporters, and it always rolls me up. They know how to push my buttons. I'm trying to be better. But whataboutism in football is just so stupid. Like, you've probably seen something on Instagram and Twitter where it's like the stat geek is good with numbers or whatever it may be, and they're looking at what the AFL ratings are for the players that are injured, and the Bulldogs have got more player ratings for their injured players, and we don't. We're like 4th rated on the list. So that's saying that the Western Bulldogs have got better players out than us, or some bullshit like that. I don't really know how that sort of stat works, but that's like tangible evidence, if you will. What our injured players bring to us is intangible. Pendlebury's, that rating isn't going off Pendlebury's leadership on field. That rating isn't going off that Brody Mychek and Jamie Elliott still, even with them being out for weeks, are still on top of the list for who we looked to going forward the most. We've kicked it to Mychek, we've kicked it to Elliott more than anyone, and that's still with them being injured. That's not showing Jordan De Goey's presence, just being around the ball. You know what I mean? So you have to take all those sort of stats and stuff with a grain of salt. We know what these injuries mean to us, and we're not using injuries as an excuse, because we've won games with players injured, we've drawn games with players injured, but you can see to the structure of the team, you can see to the synergy of the team that it does hinder us a little bit. The last lesson learned, we'll go to a positive one, is Nick Daicos will be the greatest magpie that we've ever seen in our lifetime, and it's not even going to come close. Probably by the time he's through, he's probably going to have 2-3 Brownlow medalships, maybe 2-3 premierships. He broke so many records against against the Doggies. Most contested possessions for a Collingwood football player. Most clearances for a Collingwood football player. That was a 26-year. It was a 26-year record by Nathan Buckley. Most first possessions from for a football player where the ruckman taps it and Nick Daicos gets it. They got that 25 times, the most since recorded. He was the youngest player to ever get 30 disposals against every single team. He did that in 59 games. The next one was, I think it was Matt Crouch in 70 games. So just in that one game only, he broke 4 records. And his IQ on the field is something else. He could have nearly kicked a really nice goal in the last quarter that would have got us up and about. He does everything that he can to will this team over the line. And for so long, people have knocked him saying, oh, get a hard ball. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And then he goes out and gets 27 contested possessions, 17 clearances. It's just absolutely phenomenal what he's been able to do as a full-time midfielder role without Jordan De Goey in there, without Tom Mitchell in there. So props to him. He will be the greatest Magpie that we will ever see. And it's unfortunately, sorry, Scotty, it's not even going to come close. But look, guys, these have just been my lessons learned for this game. Let me know your thoughts down below. And until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your mates. And until next time, double shackers. I'll swoop you later.